Cannabis has been used and studied by physicians for thousands of years, until its prohibition by the United States in the early 1920s. It is this new resurgence in medical cannabis that has swept the country and the globe that has caused people to take note of what could possibly be one of the most important plants in existence on our planet. And that's why we bring you the Medical Cannabis Report.
Hi, my name is Michael Ryder.
And I'm Don Bartow Jr. We're here in MedCan Report Studios giving you a look into what it takes to put on one of our shows.
Over the past year, we've had a chance to sit down with over 25 industry experts to understand what it really takes to create a successful program.
Yeah, I mean, the people we spoke with range from healthcare providers to patients to entrepreneurs hoping to get into the business to bankers and lawyers who are trying to work with their clients to assist them and navigate the pitfalls of opening a medical cannabis-related business in this country. The first group we spoke with was a group of patient advocates, and they were really concerned about patient access to safe, tested cannabis. Here's what they had to say.
We have to start with the physician education. Physicians have to be comfortable having these conversations with their patients. Patients have to feel comfortable going into their physicians and speaking with them. And I think a lot of times if physicians aren't familiar with medical marijuana or the endocannabinoid system, they don't know anything about it, it's really hard for them to have conversations with their patients. It's very uncomfortable. So patients either get no information or incorrect information.
Right.
So one of the things we are focusing on first in Maryland is physician education. We are doing physician education seminars with some of the physicians that I've worked with in Washington, D.C., registering patients, as well as a few pharmacists and a few other PhDs who have studied strain alignment, just so physicians are familiar with the medication. And many times physicians who are recommending it don't know anything about the treatment itself. They believe in it, but they're not exactly sure what strains treat what illnesses. So physician education is something that we are focusing on. And we actually have 75 physicians registered so far in Maryland for a seminar that we're having.
That's great. I mean, and I always think it's interesting when you meet a doctor or a PhD that's not working in cannabis at all, and you sit down and you have a conversation about medical cannabis,
Yes.
the endocannabinoid system, and things like that, and then they tell you, wow, you know more about a function of the human body than I do as a medical doctor.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like you're like, that's weird, you know, you're a doctor, like I shouldn't know things that you don't know, but in college, you know, Harvard, all the big colleges, they're still not really implementing it into the education for
Right,
doctors.
and I think that that's what is one of the problematic areas right there. They really don't know which way to go and where the industry is headed right now because it's taken so long. They've heard little bits.
Cannabis has been used and studied by physicians for thousands of years. Cannabis has been used and studied by physicians for thousands of years, until its prohibition by the United States in the early 1920s. It is this new resurgence in medical cannabis that has swept the country and the globe that has caused people to take note of what could possibly be one of the most important plants in existence on our planet. And that's why we bring you the Medical Cannabis Report.
Hi, my name is Michael Ryder.
And I'm Don Bartow Jr. We're here in MedCan Report Studios giving you a look into what it takes to put on one of our shows.
Over the past year, we've had a chance to sit down with over 25 industry experts to understand what it really takes to create a successful program.
Yeah, I mean, the people we spoke with range from healthcare providers to patients, to entrepreneurs hoping to get into the business, to bankers and lawyers who are trying to work with their clients to assist them and navigate the pitfalls of opening a medical cannabis-related business in this country. The first group we spoke with was a group of patient advocates, and they were really concerned about patient access to safe, tested cannabis. Here's what they had to say.
We have to start with the physician education. Physicians have to be comfortable having these conversations with their patients. Patients have to feel comfortable going into their physicians and speaking with them. And I think a lot of times if physicians aren't familiar with medical marijuana or the endocannabinoid system, they don't know anything about it, it's really hard for them to have conversations with their patients. It's very uncomfortable. So patients either get no information or incorrect information.
Right.
So one of the things we are focusing on first in Maryland is physician education. We are doing physician education seminars with some of the physicians that I've worked with in Washington, D.C., registering patients, as well as a few pharmacists and a few other PhDs who have studied strain alignment, just so physicians are familiar with the medication. And many times physicians who are recommending it don't know anything about the treatment itself. They believe in it, but they're not exactly sure what strains treat what illnesses. So physician education is something that we are focusing on. And we actually have 75 physicians registered so far in Maryland for a seminar that we're having.
It's great. I mean, and I always think it's interesting when you meet a doctor or a PhD that's not working in cannabis at all, and you sit down and you have a conversation about medical cannabis,
Yes.
the endocannabinoid system, and things like that, and then they tell you, wow, you know more about a function of the human body than I do as a medical doctor.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like you're like, that's weird, you know, you're a doctor, like I shouldn't know things that you don't know, but in college, you know, Harvard, all the big colleges, they're still not really implementing it into the education for
Right,
doctors.
and I think that is one of the problematic areas right there. They really don't know which way to go and where the industry is headed right now because it's taken so long. They've heard little bits and pieces, excerpts of TV or radio,
news stories,
news stories, and it's been a long process, but they're still unaware and still afraid. I'm afraid also on how this industry is going to unfold, especially since the dynamics of Maryland in itself, marijuana has been since a Schedule I substance that now it's trying to be regulated now under Maryland's jurisdiction. I mean, how does that feed into society, into Maryland, who black men specifically, who has been incarcerated, who has been profiled in this industry. So how can we go from that point to a structured environment where as though that is going to benefit those who were abused and how to go forward to benefit the rest of the community of Maryland?
Doctors definitely need to be educated, and they need the CMEs that are being asked in some states. That needs to be across the board, but further than that, they need to start teaching this in medical school. They need to be teaching the endocannabinoid system. There's a respiratory system, there's a digestive system, there's an endocannabinoid system, and it should be presented in the medical schools. And to your point, law enforcement also needs to be educated.
I was going to say that. That's one of the things I've been doing since we've been working in Washington, D.C. and in Maryland. I have spoken to probation. I've been brought in by management and spoken with probation officers and police officers. We've spoken with a few different departments in PG County. I've personally gone in and spoken to Baltimore officers in Baltimore City, in Montgomery County, as well as PG County. And it's really interesting to me to find that law enforcement aren't aware of the laws on the books. When I went into the probation office, I think I went into a probation office in Baltimore, and I talked about the fact that you can know the law changed back in 2015 about having marijuana in your system.
Decriminalization.
Yes, so you can no longer be violated in the state of Maryland. And
I
the
call
probation,
that immaculate conception.
absolutely, it is immaculate conception. However, it is now the law that you cannot be violated for having marijuana in your system, and they did not know that in the probation department. How could these things not be widely disseminated?
Yes.
I mean, these people are supervising people on probation and on parole, and they don't know the law,
Right.
and they are violating them. Another thing that we do is a lot of outreach to people who have been possession charges. So
Right.
we do a lot of that. We have a lot of attorneys who send those patients to us, who send these people to us, so that we can help them work with a doctor, get a recommendation, because we have registered thousands of patients, and I can honestly say that I very rarely have seen a patient who does not have a medical need for this product, even if they don't really know. A lot of times they're self-medicating. And we have a full network of doctors. There's so many different things that go along with this. Patients who have chronic pain, they can come and get their medical cannabis from one of our physicians, but then their pain management physician won't treat them anymore. So I thought it was extremely important for us to not just build a network of physicians who are willing to write the recommendations, but we have a network of physicians who are willing to treat these patients.
And incorporate it into other treatments.
Absolutely. So our network, our patients, we have gynecologists, we have pain management physicians, we have dentists, we have nurse practitioners, we have all specialties. Even if they're not writing the recommendations, they are 420 friendly, so our patients can receive the care within a network where they can comfortably say to their doctor, I am using cannabis, without the fear of the doctor saying, I don't want to treat you anymore. Because we had a lot of patients lose their pain management physicians when in Washington, D.C. in particular, when it was Maryland, the law was on the books, but it wasn't moving. This was that first year, 2013. So many of our patients were receiving care in, say, Bethesda or Silver Spring, but they were D.C. patients and they had a card.
Sure.
So we wanted to avoid that. So we built a network of physicians across all specialties, whether they're recommending or not, but they have the education, they are aware that their patients are being treated with medical cannabis, and they are still comfortable treating them. And we thought that was really important, that patients have a network of physicians so they can continue to receive their care, and not just, okay, well, we provided them with a physician to give them their medical cannabis card. So what do they do about the other treatments that they were receiving?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Awesome.
You have to
Well,
collaborate care across.
It's been great chatting, guys, and we'll be right back.
The Medical Cannabis Report is brought to you by SC&H Group and Shimatsu Scientific Instruments.
It's really important for any emerging business to get their financial house in order very early. That means establishing the right business processes, having the proper internal controls, as well as implementing the proper IT systems. It also means hiring the right people, both employees and, last but not least, hiring the right advisors. An interesting note is what other states have found is most theft of cannabis has been a result of theft by employees. In fact, the Commission requires you to have a perpetual inventory system that allows each company to track each plant and batch, and there has to be a unique identifier associated with each plant and batch. I anticipate that as part of the renewal process, these companies are going to have to submit audits of their financial statements. Well, the initial audit is due with the final application, which is within 365 days of when they receive the pre-approval. And so it makes the most sense to do that audit as of the end of their fiscal year. That will then provide a good foundation for future audits. So we're recommending that companies in the medical cannabis industry obtain audited financial statements on an annual basis.
And we're back with Shantae, Darren, and Maggie. So I guess let's jump back into the physician education topic. Maggie, do you want to tell us a little bit about the system that CannaCare Docs has to either acquire new talent as far as physician goes, or to do the marketing and outreach to reach those people?
Yeah, we're constantly doing outreach for physicians, definitely to recruit them, as well as to find ones to work in concert with. There's definitely a need for physicians out there to have someone else to take care of the medical cannabis end of their patients' care for whatever reason. You know, if they don't feel comfortable with it, it's nice for them to have a partner that they do feel comfortable with. So we work with physicians in a multitude of different ways. Some of the outreach that we do is sending out packets even to physicians that would include a letter from our physician explaining the endocannabinoid system, explaining how we can complement their practice. We also like to provide some PubMed articles, give them some real solid information as to why this is a good medication that they possibly could use themselves, and if they aren't willing to use themselves, at least to understand it better for their patients.
Right.
And then I find one of the best ways for physicians to be educated is through their own patients. When they have a patient that
or
comes,
a loved one that's
or
gone
a loved
through
one,
something.
exactly, and they come to them and they are able to say, I've had this improvement or that improvement in my life because
And they can't
of
explain
cannabis.
it with anything else.
Exactly, and that really piques their interest. And then they might be willing to start researching on their own and finding out more information and seeking out experts in the field. And it's really exciting when the light bulb goes off in their head and there's more doctors in the field. And something I think that you'll see in Maryland is more doctors are going to be more comfortable with it when the dispensaries are open.
Right.
When patients have legal access to safe medication, it will make a difference in a lot of doctors' opinions on the program, and you will see an uptick of interest even on their own.
And we had quite a few in Maryland sign up initially for the program to recommend. So I thought that was a great start to getting it going. I'm sure it's maybe tapered off a little bit, but.
Well, and I can say that I personally receive calls from physicians much more than when I first started in DC. I receive phone calls. Most of the physicians that I'm working with actually called me.
Wow.
Or they came to me through some of the physicians who are currently working with me. They were talking to them, and then the physician sent them to me, referred them to me. So I think that there's a lot more interest from physicians. They didn't know where to get the information previously, and with companies like Canacare Docs and CanX, and then there are some others out there. I think that the information is much more readily available, and physicians are starting to seek that information out. And just to add one more thing to that, what I have found with physicians is, with it still being a Schedule I drug, there's always that fear of their license, their DEA license. So they are much more comfortable.
Dark side.
Yes. We have found that physicians are much more comfortable. I'm sure you guys probably have this same experience with our physician reaching out to them and getting this information from another physician who has the same licenses that they have, and they're taking those same risks that this doctor would take as a recommending physician. So they are much more receptive of the information from another, especially initially from another physician. So our outreach efforts to physicians have been much more successful since we have physicians who have partnered with us in that outreach.
I think it's great that all your guys' organization works so closely with like physicians and stuff like that. I know our organization, we really focus on the science of cannabis and advancing things like analytical testing for quality control and accurate cannabinoid leveling, and things like genomic testing, so you can incorporate patients' DNA with their treatments. Things that should be used more in Western medicine, but aren't because they're too expensive. But there's so many great experts that just are hungry to get more involved in cannabis. Kind of like you were saying, some reach out to you and say, hey, what can I do?
And I know several physicians who are coming to the conference in Oregon because they want that information as well.
Our Cannabis Science Conference in Oregon?
Yes.
Yeah, CannabisScienceConference.com. We're bringing together great clinicians, scientists, lab directors. We have Dr. Dedi Miri from Israel Technion Institute that just confirmed to speak. So we do have a great medical cannabis session too, but our core focus as an organization is obviously like advancing the science. And science and medicine shake hands quite frequently. So I think it's great that we're all trying to do what we can and apply the skills that we maybe had before the cannabis industry into this to help people and to figure out something to do. I guess getting back to Maryland and the program here, since I know both of you guys, Maggie and Shantae, work with organizations that recommend and will recommend and help people find doctors to recommend in Maryland. So what do you guys see the timeline being for patients being able to get recommendations?
What would I like to see, or what am I hoping for, or what does reality
maybe
look like?
a little bit of both.
Based on what has happened in other states, which we can't even we can't even use that as a comparison for what's going on in Maryland, because I think this is, I would say it's kind of unprecedented, the delays we've seen in Maryland.
Exactly.
You know, I say to people all the time, look at what happened in New York last year. The licenses were awarded in July. The patients were able to go into a dispensary by, I think it was November.
Yeah.
And New York's program is very, very limiting.
It is very, very limiting, but they
they
still
were able to have access.
yes,
away.
they were able to have that access, which is really important for patients. I am estimating, and what I'm saying to patients is spring 2017.
And that's, I think, being like kind about it.
I think, I think that is being generous. But
Maybe
I think
for recommendations, but not
for recommendations. I don't know what your
access.
experience is, but we have a waiting list. I just went through this yesterday with a physician. We have a waiting list right now of patients in Maryland who have contacted us. I think the waiting list was 6,432, like 6,400 patients.
Wow.
Literally. We get patient inquiries daily. We get more patient inquiries from Maryland than we get from any in DC, and we're actively registering patients, and they can go into the dispensaries in DC. And another thing is, we're hoping that while we're waiting for Maryland, that patients from Maryland will be able to access the DC program.
That's a big thing. It's like we're having our program that won't have a residency restriction, and our neighbor to the south, DC, has this residency restriction.
They're working
and so
really
many
hard.
people could really be helped right now, like today. And then I was talking with someone the other day. It's like if a patient needs to travel somewhere, they can't go somewhere. I think it was you and I earlier. They can't go somewhere that doesn't have an operational program without a residency restriction. Because, you know, it's too much of a risk for a patient to travel with their medicine, and we definitely don't advise people to do that.
Crossing state lines is it's illegal.
Right.
You know, we say, I have patients call me and they say, well, if I come in from West Virginia, and the first thing I have to say to them is, it is illegal.
Right.
That is illegal, so I wouldn't advise you to do anything that's illegal. You know. But as a parent, as a mother of a child with special needs, I did what I had to do to get access for my son. That was a risk I was willing to take for his health care. We live in Maryland, and I was able to get access to the medication in a regulated market in another state, and as a parent, that was a risk that I was willing to take. But I would never recommend that another person do that, because it is illegal to travel from state to state. And I think that in one of the meetings that the mayor of DC had, technically, you know, her allowing for patients to come in, and then what they do, because that was one of their concerns, is, well, how are they going to get it back to Maryland? It's one of those things where you make it available. If people want that treatment, they know it's available, and we're going to assume that they're going to come into DC and they're going to consume it at a friend's home. But, you know, people are going to...
Well, that's like other states, like California doesn't have a residency restriction per se. Some doctors and some dispensaries enforce it just to be safe, but you can be from anywhere. And it's, you know, if you have an address to use, many states you can get a card. So even if you have a card going to another state that has a program, so it's just hard that patients have to go through these hoops and whistles and go get a card here and try to go here, and it's just so close to DC. So hopefully they can get some traction and maybe get that open, because like you said before, it might be some time before our program here in Maryland is up and running.
And just about the states where, like, you know, there are states, Delaware, they say they have reciprocity, but it's really not reciprocity. It just means that if you are a medical person, a medical patient in another state, then they will honor that in terms of criminal charges and things like that.
Actually, unfortunately, that was just taken off the books by a law that was added onto the books over the last month. So there are no visitor status for anyone in Delaware at this point.
And does Delaware have decrim?
They have decrim as well as a very nice medical program.
Well, I guess right before we go, one more thing I wanted to bring up is, what do you guys see price-wise? Do you think the prices will be reasonable when it's available, or do you think it might be a more expensive market starting off?
I believe that it's going to start to be rather expensive to start it off.
Which will be limiting to a lot of people and communities that don't have a lot of money
it's going to be
spend.
limited because specifically people in the city, they're on fixed incomes, they're on social service, they sell food stamps just to get cash.
Sure.
If medical marijuana and cannabis was available, and if the prices were $300-400 an ounce and everything, I mean, you're going to take food out of your child's mouth by continue to selling, you know, illegal food stamps just to get your medicine. You know, how is that going to to work and to better our community.
Sure.
You can't. I mean, it's going to have to be some type of involvement. I don't know if the church is going to have to be involved. A new
Maybe nonprofits could get involved.
Nonprofits or whatever might have to get along and helps to subsidize this or whatever. But it has to be met, on that level for citizens of our state in the inner cities who just can't afford it.
I'm hopeful that the competition will keep prices reasonable. I think that at first they're probably, it's going to be a smaller supply to get started, but as the program progresses, I definitely think that the volume of dispensaries that are going to be available and the volume of different grows will definitely be helpful for keeping the prices of the medicine in line.
I know we are launching, along with a veterans group in Washington, D.C., Compassionate Alternatives, and the sole goal of Compassionate Alternatives is to help patients pay for their physician visits, help patients obtain the medicine, help pay for the medication. So our hope is that we're going to be starting out with veterans groups and offering grants for them to see the doctor as well as to purchase their medicine. So we are launching this with actually an attorney who's really, really closely associated with veterans groups, and we've been meeting for like the last couple of months to launch and start raising money to be able to provide grants to patients.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, it's been great talking with you guys. Thanks for sitting down with us, and thank you for joining us as well.
The Medical Cannabis Report would like to thank our sponsors: SC&H Group, Shimatsu Scientific Instruments, Be More Film, and Sound Driven Pictures.
Eureka Vapor, established in 2011, is a leading cannabis oil vape pen. Available in over 200 locations across California and Colorado, and a net social reach of 30,000 people across all major platforms, Eureka Vapor's popularity is growing at a rapid speed. Awarded Best CO2 Concentrate in 2015 and named award-winning oil at High Times 2016 and HempCon 2016, the Eureka Vapor quality is proven to be top-notch, known as the way medicine should be. To see more about the Eureka Vapor quality and mission, visit eurekavapor.com.
Hi, my name is Leah Heiss, CEO of Women Grow, LLC. Women Grow is an organization that connects, educates, and empowers leaders in all segments of the cannabis industry. Today, I'm here to encourage you to be brave, adventurous, and entrepreneurial. Ask yourself one question: how could I leave my mark on the cannabis industry? Now is the time to get involved. Never before in our history have we been handed such an incredible opportunity to change the way in which the corporate world hires, works, and scales. We are standing on a precipice, and we need everyone who believes in diversity and inclusion to join us. How can you help change the paradigm? There are a number of ways. Attend a meeting. Become a member so that we may continue our mission to connect, educate, and empower current and future thought leaders in the industry. Become a certified leader in your local market. Applications are open right now. Currently, we are in the United States and Canada and expanding to new cities and countries every day. We work to help you get connected with great people and other companies to help get your cannabis concept off the ground or to a higher level. If you're interested in learning more, check out womengrow.com for more information on local meetings and events. I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Have a great day.
Hi, welcome back. Here's a video from our new show's sponsor, Shimadzu Scientific Instruments. Enjoy.
It's no wonder that so many people are starting to take a closer look at cannabis. It really is an amazing plant. Cannabis contains more than 500 compounds that can be found nowhere else in nature. Many of these substances are believed to have astonishing curative properties, easing pain, nausea, inflammation, and even reducing tumors in cancer patients. In fact, cannabis has been used by many cultures around the world for a very long time. Archaeologists in Taiwan unearthed ancient pottery with traces of cannabis more than 10,000 years old. And the first documented use of cannabis as herbal medicine was in the year 2727 BC by Chinese Emperor Shen Nung. It wasn't until 1545 that cannabis, in the form of hemp, finally arrived in the New World with the Spanish conquistadors. For centuries, hemp was used to make rope, clothing, and other everyday items. In fact, the early drafts of the Declaration of Independence were written on hemp paper. Up until the 1930s, cannabis oil was commonly used in the U.S. to treat many different ailments. Shortly after that, however, federal regulations were enacted that prohibited the use, sale, and distribution of marijuana due to its psychoactive properties. Fast forward to 1996. That's the year voters in California passed an initiative to legalize medical marijuana. Cannabis was making a comeback. Since then, many others have followed suit. Now, more than half of the states in the U.S. have legalized cannabis for medical use. All of this new demand for cannabis is creating a booming industry and driving the need for proper testing and analysis. Cannabis QC testing falls into three major categories: potency testing, terpene profiling, and contaminant screening. Analytical testing is critical to ensure that patients receive safe and effective products. Potency testing measures the levels of certain compounds in the end product, including cannabinoids like tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, and cannabidiol, CBD. Terpenes and cannabinoids are chemical compounds produced in the trichomes of cannabis flowers. They are believed to deliver most of the curative effects of cannabis. THC is the only psychoactive component in cannabis, making it a primary focus for potency testing. Customers choose medicinal products based on specific terpene and cannabinoid content. Other products are specially blended to match the needs of patients. Either way, proper and careful testing is the only way to provide accurate labeling and ensure that patients get the right curative effects for their ailments. In addition to potency profiles, cannabis testing is also used to identify a variety of contaminants, including heavy metals, residual solvents, and pesticides. Microorganisms, mycotoxins, and aflatoxins are a particular concern because the ideal growing conditions for cannabis are also ideal for the growth of harmful bacteria and fungi. But all contaminants can be very dangerous for patients with compromised immune systems. That's why QC labs, growers, processors, and dispensers of medical marijuana products are looking to improve their testing and analysis procedures. And that's why Shimadzu developed the Cannabis Analyzer for Potency. It's the first testing instrument designed specifically for the needs of cannabis labs. With low initial investment and operation costs, it's the perfect solution for potency analysis. Plus, it's easy to use. The Cannabis Analyzer for Potency comes complete with turnkey methods and the column, reagents, and consumables needed to get up and running fast. In fact, it includes the first fully validated cannabinoid HPLC method in history. QC labs can take advantage of the ultra-fast mode for increased throughput on routine cannabinoid screening. A high-resolution mode is also available for higher-resolution cannabinoid interrogations and research. To learn more about the Shimadzu Cannabis Analyzer for Potency and other Shimadzu cannabis testing solutions, visit www.growyourlab.com.
Thanks, Shimadzu, for that great informative video. Be sure to join us after the break for more on the importance of tested cannabis.
I am Eric Chapman.
I'm Patrick Doherty.
And this We are Cloud N. What's different between our nebulizer and other nebulizers is that we have the ability to control dosage with this.
Welcome back, and thanks again to our new sponsor, Shimadzu Scientific Instruments. We talk a lot in this show about the importance of tested cannabis, but it goes way beyond potency. We're talking about testing for contaminants such as pesticide residues and molds, anything that can be picked up from the time of growing through processing and dispensing. The next panel we're going to look at here has a few experts and their thoughts on the importance of tested medical cannabis for the patients in a community.
So I guess, Andrew, maybe we could start, you could talk about testing and dosage control and the importance of testing and why you think it's so important that we have testing in Maryland, because some states like DC, well, in districts like DC, don't actually have any testing. So what can you kind of compare those two situations?
No, I mean, it's obviously drastically different situations. I'm a physician. I'm the CEO of Steve Hill, Maryland. And I've been practicing medicine for 18 years, and I'm a gastroenterologist. We see a lot of patients who are suffering from cancer and other disorders, chronic pain that really have no recourse. And one of the things I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years that got me interested in medical cannabis was that some of these patients were taking cannabis on their own. And they would tell me about it because we have a good relationship with our patients. And invariably, what I would ask them is, look, you're getting chemotherapy, you're immune compromised. How do you know that what you're getting is clean or safe and won't make you even sicker? And the patients never really had an answer for that. And I think, you know, when it became clear that the medical cannabis was going to be available in Maryland, as a practice, one of the things we talked about with some of the partners was it'd be great to make sure that the patients who are most at risk are protected when the industry becomes viable in Maryland. So that's how we got started at Steve Hill, and we basically partnered with Steve Hill in California to make sure we had the best technology for testing, and so that we could really create a compliant environment. Because what people don't understand is that cannabis can hurt you. If it's tainted, you might say, well, what do you find in medical cannabis that could be dangerous? Well, a lot of people know that E. coli and you've seen outbreaks in the news about lettuce that's contaminated and other plants. Cannabis is a plant. So if people don't wash their hands when they're processing it, it can be contaminated with bacteria. It can make people sick, particularly if their immune systems are at risk. Mold and yeast and other things like that can also grow in plants. And if you are somebody who is been treated with chemotherapy, you can get very sick from a mold called aspergillus. It can be fatal. So even if you're not sick, people can get very ill from E. coli. I know that pregnant women go to the store and they try not to eat fish with mercury, right? Mm-hmm. Well, cannabis is a plant that absorbs a lot of heavy metals, so that you could get heavy metal toxicity if you use a lot of cannabis that's tainted with heavy metals. So I think, you know, this is a state where this is a medicine, and it should be treated as such. And you don't go to the pharmacy and pick up something and wonder what's in the medicine you got. You know it's been tested rigorously before you give it to your child or your sick relative. And I think that, you know, I'm proud of Maryland to create a standard where testing is important and a very big part of the program, so that when children who have seizures get cannabis, it's safe for them. When relatives who have cancer get cannabis, it's safe for them, so they don't get, you know, sick or die from their treatment. So Maryland is taking the lead with a very thorough testing regimen, which I think is defined to protect the patients. I think the compliance with this and labs like Steve Hill and other labs will be critical in making sure that a compliant atmosphere is really what I think is going to define the success of the medical cannabis industry in Maryland.
I think it's interesting, you know, thinking about cannabis, the industry from a testing perspective and the medical perspective. We are dealing with a substance that has had decades of propaganda piled up and fed into the citizenry of this country. And part of, I think, the efficacy of medical cannabis as medicine, and frankly, down the road as an adult use product, is going to depend upon safety, and it's going to depend upon standards. And companies like Steep Hill, I think, are doing a tremendous service to the industry as a whole, not just with respect to how they're serving individual operators, but how they're increasing, frankly, the seriousness of the industry and raising the discourse.
Well, thanks for watching our show. We really hope you got some information out of it that you can use. And as we move into the new year, we encourage you to send us your stories, your questions, your updates on how medical cannabis is shaping up in your community.
Yeah, and luckily enough, we're going to be at the Women Grow Summit.
Oh yeah, February 1st through 3rd in Denver, Colorado. Mike and I will be at the Leadership Summit for Women Grow. A lot of great speakers lined up for that. Get your tickets today. You don't want to miss it. Jay Canna's Josh Crosney sat down with Leah Heiss from Women Grow to talk a little bit about the summit. Here it is, and Happy New Year. See you next year.
Happy New Year.
The Leadership Summit will be the first week in February. It will be back-to-back with the NCIA Seed to Sale Show, which is the first, also the first week of February in Denver. And last year, actually 2 years ago, our first Leadership Summit, we had 200 women at. Last year, we had 1,200.
Wow.
This year, I'm hoping that we sell out the Ellie. In fact, I'm pretty sure we will sell out the Ellie at Calkins Opera House, and we'll have 3,200.
Well, Leah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great speaking with you, and I look forward to seeing what has in the future for Women Grow.
Thank you very much.
And for you as the new CEO.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The Medical Cannabis Report would like to thank our sponsors: SC&H Group, Shimatsu Scientific Instruments, Be More Film, and Sound Driven Pictures. Promotional consideration also given to Smoke. Can you taste that hickory goodness? And Shockers, Baltimore's finest smoke shop.